President Clinton, welcome to Medellin. You know, when you think back, maybe less than 7 years ago, nobody in their right mind would have ever thought you would be in this city today. And we want to thank you especially for being here. And you know, President Clinton needs no introduction for anybody. He's truly a citizen of the world. And has demonstrated an immense love for Latin America, for the Caribbean. I often wonder if it's, Carlos Fuentes, your friend, used to say that Latin America begins with the Mason-Dixon line, so if you're from the South, that's probably why we're so integrated and understand our culture so well. I would like to take this dialogue and begin with, of course, the issue of the day. We've been talking a lot about, of course, the financial crisis, its implications, what this will all mean for Latin America. And, you served as President of the United States under the period of perhaps one of the most amazing prosperity we've seen today. Did you believe that we would get to this point? But more importantly, what do you think it's going to do? How deep is this going to still go? I think that's a question in everybody's mind. And more importantly, how can we get out? What is it that we're going to need to do to get out of this crisis?
Did I believe we would get to this point? How deep will it go? What are we to get out? You should have all brought sleeping bags. Let me say thank you for the warm welcome. Happy anniversary to the Inter-American Bank. Thank you for your leadership of the bank. And I would like to thank the leaders of Colombia for making it possible for me to come to Medellin. It's a beautiful city, and maybe many more people will follow me now that we'll get a little publicity about being here. It's an honor to be here. I began to worry about the American economy several years ago when it became obvious that first, when the high-tech bubble burst, there was no real economic growth in America except in housing and consumer spending and finance. And a lot of money was circulating in our economy then in an attempt to avoid a recession. So too much money was put into housing because there weren't other good investment alternatives. If you look, for example, at the wealthy countries that were trying to meet their Kyoto climate change targets and therefore made a serious commitment to clean energy, they're not in as bad a trouble as the United States. Germany, #1 user of solar energy, even though it's not a particularly sunny country. Sweden will meet its climate change targets. Denmark will. They didn't have big increases in inequality. Now, the United Kingdom is now in trouble because they had highly leveraged housing, but before they were doing very, very well. So we were putting too much money through a narrow funnel. That's the first thing. And the money was all being made in housing and finance, so the people in finance started to figure out how to make more money out of housing. And that's how you got these subprime mortgages and then the securitization of the subprime mortgages. That was accompanied by a weakening of the regulatory framework. The belief that in the last government in America that less regulation was always better, less oversight was always better. And then there was a third factor that has not been written about as much, and that is there was a weakening of the risk assessment of any given investment. The big investment houses that previously had contributed to a fund to provide for risk assessments, and there was never really any incentive to get anything other than a good one. But for whatever reason, the risk assessments just fell off the track, and investments were said to be low risk that were plainly high risk. And all those things together created a combustible mix. Meanwhile, I left the country with a projected surplus over a 10-year period of over $5 trillion. Instead, They got rid of it all with tax cuts, principally upper income people, and the cost of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, and we doubled the debt of America, so that when we confronted this crisis, we had to confront it with borrowed money, which is also something that adds a little bit to the instability. Did I foresee all that? No. But I did always believe it was a bad thing to have growing inequality. Finally, since 1973, we never had anything but growing income inequality in America, except in my second term. And through a combination of job growth and government policies, we had declining inequality. We moved 100 times as many people from poverty into